Welcome to your next tech startup, the podcast exploring why startup hiring is tough and interviews suck. Host Isabel Rasmussen, a head of technical recruitment, draws on over a decade of experience along with expert guests to unpack what's broken and how to fix it. Let's dive in.
Welcome to your next tech startup. I'm host Isabel Rasmussen. Today I have with me Preston Lee, who has recently founded Tribe Money. One of the things that I had wanted to talk to you about is because you're still in pre-seed stage.
Yes.
And you have already 5 engineers who are all in the United States working for you.
Yes. Most of them are friends or friends of friends. We have about 5 engineers.
And I thought that was interesting and unique because typically I help early stage founders with hiring. I'm speaking with them when they're a little bit past pre-seed. They've typically raised a few $1 million at least, and they don't have 5 engineers on the team yet. And so I found it interesting that you have already built up a team at this stage. And then also when you're thinking about hiring and building your team, there's the when to do it, and there's also the how to do it. So you opted for a kind of friends of Seattle-based team instead of potentially hiring like an offshore team, or as someone in another episode talks to me about, just you don't have to hire a team anymore. You just have AI write all your code.
That is one of those things you can do in the modern age, that's for sure.
So just talk to me a little bit about how you made the decision to hire at this stage and what was important about that.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of considerations to it. I think that in the very beginning, and this was before we even started the startup, me and my co-founder Josh, we were just talking about it. I honestly thought that I could build the app within a couple of months just by myself.
Okay.
And I think it was similar to the sort of thing where it's like with the AI tools and all the new tooling and things that you can do to speed up your development. There are a lot of ways that an individual developer can just really be empowered to build huge apps, things that would be really, really difficult, maybe even 5 or 10 years ago. Now, that being said, as soon as I start touching actual finance code, finance technology, FinTech code, it was immediately clear, it's so obvious that there are so many small considerations and the nuances with FinTech, especially given that the risks are so high. So, for example, if you're doing a database read and write about a customer's balance and they're trying to send a transfer, any small error within that whole transaction will basically be stealing money from your customer. And that's an awful customer experience. And given that Tribe Money, we're basically doing very complex financial interactions where we're trying to help people share money together, right? And so these are, in Tribe Money, we set up these pools, these wallets for friends and families and organizations to share money together. It was really important that we got that right. If there was anything that was a little bit off or unsafe about our transactions, then not only could people not trust our transactions, but they also couldn't trust each other on our app. And given that it was a group setting,
you could destroy families.
these things could be misunderstandings, you know. If our transfers were not reflecting things correctly, then yeah, we could literally be destroying relationships. So I think that was when we started to realize, okay, before we have to make sure that we have a lot of eyes on this, not only so that we can make sure that it's correct the first time, but also that if something goes wrong, it's really hard for a single developer, no matter how many tools you have, to support many customers and to support a lot of different errors. So that's when we started hiring people and looking for people in our friend group. And actually, that is one of the best ways to start out, especially at the startup.
I have friends that are software engineers, but I don't really know how good they are at writing code. So I don't know, maybe because you went to school with some of these people that you do actually know that they're good. But like, how did you go about vetting your network? There is this belief that a lot of engineers kind of suck. Our hiring processes are pretty oriented around thinking, does this person actually know how to write code and do it well and solve problems? And the resume isn't necessarily believed a lot. And then you're hiring people right out of college, so there's not much of a resume to believe. So yeah.
Right.
So with that, like, kind of how were you making hiring decisions?
I guess that's an interesting question because actually the first people that we hired who ended up being amazing for our business, actually, they
Okay.
they were able to just make huge strides in setting up the infrastructure and setting up the front end and back end stuff. All the integrations that we do today, they set them up. We actually didn't have any coding part of our interview.
Okay.
And this was actually very intentional because I think that nowadays coding is so gamed. You know, people do leak code all the time. They practice different coding
Uh-huh.
questions. And I think it's also a subtle thing here where I think you're talking about like, oh, most engineers suck. Well, most engineers today, they majored in computer science in school, and that sort of mainstream line of education, it really encourages a lot of students to sort of memorize solutions to problems and to not have a lot of real world experience building real projects, right? Which is the most important
Okay.
part. You can do algorithms as much as you want, and they're beautiful, and I love them, and I think that everybody should have a intellectual curiosity about them. That's what got me into computer science, right?
Yeah.
But you have to build things if you want to be an engineer, right? If you
Yeah.
want to just think about algorithms and think about things, then go do research. It's a different sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
If you're doing engineering, you need to be able to build things. And I think the most important part of being able to build something is that curiosity to explore, that passion to say, I really want to build this thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't actually even matter how much you know, as long as you have this passion about, I really want to build this thing. And nothing's going to stop me if I run into some errors and there's a
Yeah.
difference between the development and staging environments. And, there's all these little tiny things that block your path to your vision, right? And people who go through college and they come out of college and they've done all that, they don't necessarily have that part right down. Where it's like
So
nothing can
is
stop me,
I
right?
don't think that most engineers suck. I think that most interview processes are designed with the fear that most
Yeah,
engineers suck. I hate it because I'm just like, can't we just trust that people are good and know how to do their job? But that is not how any hiring manager I've ever worked with wants to do things. But
yeah,
what you're saying is you are kind of coming from a place of trust that if they have a CS degree, they have the training and understanding to know how to build things. And it's the curiosity, and that's what you're really screening for is the desire to not just understand and repeat what I've been taught in some education,
yeah.
but so you're screening for like someone's like problem solving, curiosity, which and those are things that you know, in a friend group are things that you get a much better sense of than you're probably not having beers and like figuring out if like how good they are at solving algorithms, but you do get a sense of like how curious they are and how involved they are in problem solving.
Yeah, exactly. And I would also like to clarify that I don't think most engineers suck.
No,
But
you
I
didn't
do
say it. You
actually,
said that I said it.
yeah, and I do actually believe that most interview processes select for engineers that suck.
Oh,
So
okay.
it is that sort of thing where it's like,
So talk
if
to me
you,
a bit about that. Why do you say that?
yeah, so that's the thing is that and I think that's why I said it was a kind of like a subtle point. It's like when you test for something and you start to metricize it, right? You sort of have all these metrics about, oh, if they solve, or if they're able to solve
Yeah.
this problem versus this problem. People catch on pretty quickly to like what the sort of impetus of the test really is. All my friends, when we were getting out of college, including me, we would all practically code and we'd all try to see how fast we could solve these algorithms. The fact of the matter is that that is so perpendicular almost to actual engineering. You're never in actual production code going to be like, oh, I need to code a binary tree here and I need to make it
Yeah.
really right.
Right. Yeah.
The problems are so much more high level and you have so much more time to think about them, right? And
Yeah.
you actually want to be able to use all that time. If you are somebody who is the type of person that just like quickly tries to find, the best answer, the most complex
Okay.
answer right now. You have to be able to communicate that answer. And also, it doesn't always have to be the fastest answer. It has to be one that is reliable. It has to be one that is intuitive, right?
Yeah.
These things are much more important to real life engineering than being able to solve the best, most efficient algorithm. And
Yeah.
I will caveat this with saying that there are some type of engineers who it would be really, really great if they had superhero engineering skills and they could find the best algorithm. They know all the algorithms. Hardware engineers come into mind very quickly.
Mhm.
You're working very, very low level. Then you do want to find people who understand systems very well. For example, high frequency trading firms, anything that really, really requires that speed. You want engineers who kind of all are on the same page about that, right? But
So
I don't
I'm
think
going
that's
to
what we're talking
switch
about.
once you get your next round of funding. At some point, you're going to need to hire engineers that you have, you know, no relationship, previous relationship with. So I'm curious, have you like, and maybe you haven't thought, because you're not in that problem space yet, but like, how do you how do you think it should be done?
That is fair because I guess the things that I'm talking about, they relate more to people that I already know, like my friends who I know
Yeah,
they got a
it's
CS
very
degree.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Well,
that they've done projects at some point.
and in the
It's
future, I
like,
mean, you could have a requirement that everyone that you hire has a CS degree. That's not a big deal, but it's a pretty big leap to like do that, just do behavior-based interviews and make a hire.
yeah, that is a very large leap. And you know what? I think that having a CS degree, even that condition, I'm not sure that that really lends itself to being a great engineer. That
Right.
sort of thing will change when, I start hiring people who are, I don't know them, and suddenly having a CS degree suddenly becomes a very good heuristic for who is serious about programming, who isn't. That being said, you know, our interviews were not just like all behavioral. We were just asking like, oh, what would you do in this situation hypothetically? What it really was actually was talking to people about like things that they have done, right? About the projects that they've written and things that they've done on the side. What do they do for coding? Like, even for fun projects, right?
Yeah.
And seeing how well they were able to talk through it. A lot of the things that we were
So
looking
a
for in
technical
that,
deep dive, right?
yeah, like
Yeah.
like really think about like what were you feeling at the time of like when you had to code this and what were the problems that you ran into? And I've noticed that if you can ask somebody about like a project and they can tell you that they ran into a problem and that it was really hard and that they had to solve it, that person probably went through hell to like solve that problem. Even if it was
Right.
like a small problem or even if it was like a small project, these are the type of moments that we were looking for when we were hiring. And I think that with the original people that we hired, it was like, yes, they all had these sort of like types of moments where it was like, yeah, there's this really difficult like problem about coordinating like drones when they're flying, right?
Mhm.
And I really just wanted to solve that problem, and this is how I tried to do it. And maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but you
Uh-huh.
know, um, yeah,
And yeah, no, and I think honestly, of all the technical interviews, I think the technical deep dive is the I think the most accurate interview to like someone who is a no and someone who's a yes is a yes. Although I do think that the technical deep dive, there's still a level of preparation that people have to do to be able to like thoughtfully think through the work that they did. That not hours and hours of practicing on leak code type of preparation. We never talked about the unexpected learnings from hiring. So tell me about some unexpected things that so far you've already learned in hiring.
I would just say that you just never judge somebody off of that, you know?
Oh,
I think so. One of the people that we ended up hiring is just like somebody that I knew from college,
okay.
and we didn't talk too much, but he was always a very interesting person whenever we did talk. It turned out that he graduated college, or he actually dropped out of college before he graduated. He was having a pretty rough time and he wasn't able to find a job anywhere. I was kind of like thinking, oh, maybe he's just being rejected by all these different companies because he's not competent or something. Just one day out of the blue, he's just like, I heard that you're starting this company. You probably know a lot about full stack apps, how to set them up. He wasn't even asking me for a job. He was actually just asking me, I want to set this thing up for my mom, and she has this business. And I was wondering what kind of tools you use. I used the React Native and the Node.js, and just kind of the way that I did it. He's like, "Oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I hope your company does well." We just kind of stopped talking about it. A couple weeks passed by. He says, "Yeah, I use those things that you told me about, and I set up an app for my mom, and she loves it." And I was like, "Oh, so you actually went out and built this thing, and it took you only a couple weeks. And he's like, yeah, and you know what? I'm actually going to see if some other people want to use it, but it's just a small app. It's nothing really big. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
you know, do you want to come work for us?
And that was it?
This is like, yeah, because as soon as I saw that he actually was able to take just very small advice and he set up this app
Yeah.
and he had a customer, right? Like, it doesn't even matter who your customer is, right? You had somebody who you're building it for and they start using it and you take that feedback and you start building something for them. I think that's really the mark of like somebody who can really take things to the next level, right?
Yeah.
They're not just talking about it. They're
Yeah.
not just like
That's
a
so
programmer. They are a
yeah.
builder, right?
That's so interesting because I'm just like, well, isn't that what all software engineers do? Like they build, I mean, I've interviewed thousands of engineers and like they build this on a side project, they do this, they do that. And like, I don't even take it that seriously because I'm just like, oh, yeah, you're an engineer. That's an interesting perspective. I would love to do this interview, like a part 2 of this interview in like 3 to 5 years. And like,
That's true.
and well, and I hope that you don't change. I find the hiring processes like they suck. The engineers don't suck, the hiring process sucks. And that there's like all these like absurd hoops to jump through. Like I tell hiring managers that they're going to have to be prepared for these interviews, and a lot of hiring managers don't believe me. They think no, a great engineer can just do it. And I'm like, that's not like how interviewing works. Like great engineers bomb interviews all the time. So, yeah, so I would love for the hiring dynamics to drastically change and to be, more of like technical deep dives, curiosity around like what people have done, having trust that people will do what they say they're going to do or what they have done, and then, to be successful. And like the one hire that I got that they had a very loose interview process was fired 6 weeks later.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I don't know what the right answer is, but it's great to talk to someone who is not making engineers jump through all these hoops, doesn't believe in that as a hiring process. And I'm just super curious to see how things evolve for you. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to me, and best of luck.
I only have like lots of plans, but with startup stuff, it's always so like there's so much variance. It feels like it's like you never know what the future holds. So we'll see what happens in 3 to 5 years, and hopefully I'm reaching out to you like thinking about like how to level up our hiring experience. So yeah, great talking to you.
Yes, awesome. Bye.
Cool.